everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining our webinar. I'm Perla Pekitowski, and we're here today to talk about a very important step in the surrogacy process, and that is the escrow process. Recently, another escrow provider has shaken up our community, and this just underscores the need to choose a reliable escrow company. And this is why we're here today with Adam Winder, president of SeedTrust, to discuss the escrow process in general. Hi, Adam. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Perla. Thank you for having me today.
Adam, can we please start talking about your professional background and SeedTrust as an escrow provider?
Absolutely. Yeah, my background is I'm an MBA, but was in banking for many years. At the end of my banking career, I was helping run strategy for the commercial and wholesale division of SeedTrust, or SunTrust, not to be confused with SeedTrust, which is now Truist Bank. So coming from a financial banking background, and the founders of the company were a CPA and an attorney. So effectively, my business partners saw the need within surrogacy that there was not and needed to be a secure, reliable, and transparent solution for escrow that was actually protecting all the parties involved. When we came into the space, it did not exist, and we have innovated that over the years. So that's like the founding story of SeedTrust. A lot of people joke about us and call us a bad joke. A banker, attorney, and a CPA. But honestly, I think having those respective expertise in running a complex financial company, an escrow company, and the way we do in surrogacy is necessary. And I'll tell you that, when we see issues in escrow like we've seen this year with the most recent one, especially, it just breaks our heart. It's our purpose to eliminate that risk in this industry, and to not only just eliminate the risk of bad actors, as we think we're seeing now, but also just reduce the financial stress, because surrogacy is beautiful. Surrogacy and emulation is beautiful, and there's nothing more special than helping families grow and have children, and so many people go through so much to get to surrogacy and get through surrogacy, emotionally and financially. So we really strive to take the financial process and the tension out and risk out of the process, and to see others come in and put people who've already gone through so much, and honestly, our entire industry at risk is terrible. So my heart goes out to those people, and hopefully today we can assure folks that the risk and the type of event we see that's trending right now and that we're seeing is not only terrible, but it's avoidable, and it's avoidable by picking the correct and secure escrow provider.
Thank you for that, Adam, and you're absolutely right. It's really devastating that so many intended parents, surrogates, and industry professionals are dealing with this type of issues, and when they could have been prevented, right? That brings me to my next question. It's, how do you set yourself apart from other providers?
Yeah, look, often the escrow decision for an intended parent can be an afterthought, because there's so many decisions to make, right? There's a lot of professionals to pick, and escrow can seem like such a small part of it. And it's not. It's a really important decision. So it's critical that intended parents, surrogates, and donors know that the escrow company is not just a function of holding the money and holding the money securely. It's a function of being involved throughout the entire process. Escrow companies, as they've evolved, honestly, as we have evolved escrow in the industry, takes a critical role of serving as the third party holding the money and administering it according to the contracts. So not just holding it securely, but checking the requests against the legal contracts to make sure it's correct and it has the proper documentation, or getting verification when it doesn't, or navigating misunderstandings or disputes properly. So the escrow company is integral and works with all parties involved on a day-to-day basis throughout the journey. So having a provider that is qualified to manage that complex process and be a good partner to everybody involved is critical. And so with SeedTrust, we take pride in being the one that's always innovated and kind of pushed the envelope of what escrow should be and what secure escrow means, because this industry deserves that. The people that we're helping deserve that. So what separates us is we never stop innovating and improving the company. We never stop increasing our security. And every time we have the ability to step that up or push the envelope, we do, and then others often follow, which as the market leader, that's our responsibility to set that case and that cadence. To give you an example, when we came into the industry, people were still sending checks in the mail, and there was no such thing as a scheduled payment or a non-contingent payment or a scheduled payment calendar where surrogates got paid. Payments automatically go out monthly in accordance to their contracts. There was no such thing as a large bond protecting escrow. We're innovating that. Honestly, back then, escrow companies didn't take any responsibility to check the contracts or check the receipts. We innovated that and pushed that as something that was important to protect all parties involved. So what I think separates SeedTrust apart is we have all the fundamental and core elements that's required to run a secure financial company and execute for our clients throughout this entire complex process. And we've been able to build that is because we constantly reinvest and reinvent our technology, our team, our security measures, and we hold nothing back in doing that. And it's not competitive pressure that's pushing us to do that. It's our own mission and purpose to help these families securely and be a good partner to everybody involved. So when I think about escrow, selecting an escrow, which I think we'll talk about, and I think about what sets SeedTrust apart, it's because we have all those fundamental elements, which include being qualified and experienced. What does qualification mean? I think people need professional backgrounds to run a financial company. That's, at SeedTrust, we have 3 attorneys, 2 CPAs, 2 MBAs, and a team of 48 professionals that are fully dedicated to escrow. Wake up obsessed every day with doing escrow well. And together that team has managed over 20,000 cases successfully. So we're extremely qualified and experienced because, again, it's not like other escrow companies. We have to have the experience to guide through disputes, to decide whether something is included in the contract and should be paid. And honestly, sometimes just to be the one to talk between the parties to help everybody understand what's common, what's in the contract, and so forth. So escrow plays a very critical role. The other thing that I think makes us very different is kind of our structure and processes and systems, right? For an escrow company, to be secure, it needs proper structure with proper checks and balances and division between the different departments, the different people in different roles. And it needs very structured processes to ensure that nobody can breach that system. And then it needs the systems that govern to ensure that process is followed in terms of the technology and that nobody can breach it. And also the systems also create transparency. And we can certainly talk more about that. But without that structure in place, there is the risk of somebody becoming a bad actor and doing something bad. To give you an example, I'm not a signer on our banks. I run the operational and legal side. The signers fall to the other side of the business after our 5-step process. And that's the kind of rigor and structure it takes to ensure people's money is safe. And that's what we have in place, plus some, in everything we do. We also take a lot of pride in the fact that we're independent. SeedTrust is not an attorney that represents either. We have attorneys on our team, but we don't represent either party. We represent We only represent them as their escrow agent, governed by our escrow agreement and their underlying agreements. So that independence allows us to be a neutral guide through the process and make sure everybody's safe. And of course, if there is disputes or material disputes, then we have the ability in the proper way to bring in the attorneys to decide. But usually people with our guidance, our clients with the right guidance and understanding, usually everything works out just fine. Also, again, specialized. This is very complex. Surrogacy escrow is complex, it's nuanced, it's a multi-year process with 100+ transactions. So having the expertise and specialty to manage that is really critical. The other thing, again, that we innovated that's extremely important is bonding and insurance. And I will tell you at SeedTrust, we have the most robust package that we can get, and we're really proud of it. And we could talk a lot more about this. I could talk about all of these subjects in spades, but in escrow, and particularly in light of what we're seeing in the market today, what's extremely critical is bonding. And we'll talk a lot more about what bonding means, but SeedTrust has a very robust bonding and insurance package. And in addition, we have oversight with not only all of the licenses associated with our attorneys and our CPAs and their regulatory bodies that folks could file a complaint with, and form an investigation. We often have the audits of our bonding companies and others to ensure everything is run well at SeedTrust, and that everything is secure, and done well. So these elements are core security elements that separate us. What also separates us is we care. Like, we truly love this industry, and we truly care about everybody and all the amazing people that work to help families grow through surrogacy and egg donation, and also our clients that are entrusting us to help guide them through that process on the financial side. So we take a lot of pride in just being a good company that truly cares about our clients, our partners, the industry, and work to be there alongside them through all this, including times like this. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, extensively. Thank you so much. And I have to say, I'm a witness of the good work that SeedTrust does, and the type of work that the employees of SeedTrust do, and how much they care, and good communication all throughout the journey. So thank you for that. One of the questions that I've seen pop up lately because of all these issues is what, can I actually hold funds myself and pay my surrogate directly? And I can give you a lot of reasons why not, but I would love for you to as the expert, to please share with everybody else why that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah, look, I understand why people would ask that question or have this fear. I guess what I want to assure people from what I see in the industry, and as one who's been advocating aggressively to raise the bar in escrow and qualified escrow and more security in escrow, what just happened, or what is seemingly happening with the other company, was a particular instance where the escrow provider was not qualified, did not have the proper structure in place, the proper systems, the proper checks and balances, and on top of all that, decided to do something bad. Okay, that is not common in our industry, and that type of risk is extremely limited to zero when you select the right provider. And again, my heart goes out to the families that were working with the current issue, but that does not represent how escrow works in our industry, and it has worked effectively for many, many, many years. Escrow, the idea of self-funding throughout, is troubled for a number of reasons. As the company that's often holding the money between the parties through a very complex journey with legal contracts and representation on both sides, things happen. So first of all, one of our core roles, which people don't often think about, is the intended parent and the surrogate should be focusing their conversations on the baby. on this beautiful journey that they're going on, and not where's my payment, where's my money, is it here on time, and why I'm getting paid or not getting paid. You need a company in between who's an expert at that, that's going to mediate that and explain that and make sure that everybody's paid on time. Because what the worst thing that could happen is all this intended parents and surrogates relationships could become about when the payment is sent, how it's sent, when's it arrived. And it's extremely important per the contracts and how everybody feels that people are paid on time and correctly with the money that's due. There's also, we save thousands and million plus in mistakes every year of requests that come in that don't have the proper documentation, that don't have the proper receipts, that are wrong and were never contemplated in the contract. And as the mediator and the escrow company, it's our job to check that request against the underlying contracts. And if it's wrong, send it back. Or if it requires documentation, to send it back. Without that in between, mistakes will happen. People will be in breach of their contract, and the intended parents and the surrogates and donors relationship will become all about payments and timing of money. In addition, some of the worst things we see is when there's not funding available to pay. And then everybody becomes stressed, and nobody wants a surrogate or donor who is feeling financially stressed or worried about money when they're carrying a baby. That should not be how she feels or what she's dealing with. That part should be easy and insured. And not having escrow funded and managed by a qualified escrow puts the surrogate at risk. It puts the surrogate at risk of not getting paid timely or money being withheld. And it also just puts an extreme burden on intended parents to process hundreds of payments, as well as donors. It's really, I understand the reaction. I deeply empathize, but people should not associate in this issue with one smaller, unsecure, unqualified provider against the entire industry. It would be like saying the Silicon Valley Bank issue should put all banks out of question and people should put money under the mattress. This would be worse than that because you still have to manage all the complexities of the journey. So it's not a good solution. I highly advise people to find a good provider that they can trust, that's secure, that checks all the core elements of proper management and qualifications, and focus on the family, not the payments and negotiation of the contract terms.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's indeed so complex. That was actually the reason that we here at Fairfax Surrogacy offer a fixed fee program, precisely to remove all those financial worries so that intended parents and surrogates can focus on really the beautiful process of creating a family together. So yeah, that's very true. Adam, so, again, going back to the trust issues that people are feeling, right now with the current situation, what kind of security measures do you take at SeedTrust and to protect the funds that intended parents deposit into a SeedTrust account or an escrow account for you?
Yeah, so for sure. So big picture again, qualified, experienced, you need to have that in place. We are, right? Structure, process, systems, independent and specialized, bonding and insurance and oversight and audits. These are the core areas I think about as someone who runs an escrow company, a financial company in our space. So I need all of these elements in place to properly protect our clients from a day-to-day mistake, risk, process pain standpoint, and also from the risk of theft. So all of these need to be in place. So at SeedTrust, we have them all. We talked a little bit about it. We are qualified. Multiple attorneys, 3 attorneys on the team, multiple CPAs, 2, multiple MBAs, and then we have the proper structure and we're really proud of our structure at SeedTrust. We have and any escrow company needs to have checks and balances. Any business should have checks and balance, but especially a financial organization. And this is where my background, coming from banking, and my business partner's background as a CPA, really pays off, because we sit around and think about all the times when I was in banking, how we saw fraud happen. all the times as a CPA, he would advise his clients to ensure there was protection and proper checks and balances within companies. So we've put an extreme structure in place that it would take, and we call it our 5-step approval process. But effectively, we have a separation of our legal team, which is the team that works with our clients and approves every request. This is the team of experts, of lawyers, paralegals, and teammates who specialize in just executing on the requests that come in, scheduling the payments that should go out. And that team can only approve. They can't request a payment. They can only approve a payment. After they approve it, it goes to a separate payment team who reports up to separate management, who they review the payment again to make sure there's no duplicates, the proper banking information, the proper payment and banking information is in there, that it also, they're checking the legal team. Once the payment team approves it, it goes to another banking team. That banking team then has to go through every step of that to double check them and then verify that the banking information is correct. And by the way, they can't change any of this. If anything needs to change, they have to send it back to the prior group. So if something gets all the way to banking and there's an issue with overall approval, it goes all the way back to the approval team and all the way back through the whole process. After that, and then after the banking team verifies it, it goes off to the banking team to issue it. And then we have dual controls and dual approvals at the bank. So it takes multiple people to upload, submit, approve, and approve at the bank for money to go out. And then on top of that, we're doing daily bank reconciliations. So our team is checking and auditing those transactions against both of our accounting system and our escrow system on a daily basis. So even if there somehow was a mistake, we're catching it from an audit standpoint. So including myself and my business partners, it would take 5 of us colluding across different teams, different managers, and different expertise with our different licensings and background to take a dollar from anybody at SeedTrust. So we put in place rigor, and that's just the overall process. Every step of that has extreme structural elements and approval processes to change anything that ensures that nothing could ever be done in a way where people could steal. Again, our teammates are passionate, caring professionals who would never steal. But as a banker and a CPA and attorney-led company, we're going to put measures in place to where even if a good person did go bad and tried to, they couldn't, including us. So it's extremely important to have checks and balances in place. And when I hear of failures, whether it's the owner or an employee taking money from escrow, it's avoidable with structure, especially if that structure is governed within systems and processes that can't be broken. At SeedTrust, we built a custom software that encompasses everything our team does, everything, and nothing goes outside of the system, period. And not only does every step within SeedTrust get done within the system and tracked and monitored and dashboards and activity logs and everything, it's also audited by a completely separate system. That's our accounting system, where we're pulling the bank ledgers and has a completely separate accounting team that's checking it daily against their separate accounting software. And then all of that's run through our system, which also creates transparency to our clients, to our agency partners. So if somebody was to do something wrong and somehow get 5 people to collude, which I think would be really hard or impossible, but let's just say it did, it would immediately get flagged by our clients or our agency partners who would get notifications of money coming out and not landing where it's supposed to go. So I think all that's extremely, extremely, extremely necessary. And we have it probably overcooked at SeedTrust. I mean, we probably could be a little bit more faster and efficient if we didn't have such processes in place. But it's extremely critical to make sure, A, there's no mistakes, because mistakes add up financially for our clients and for us, and B, that there's no risk of theft. We think the independence and the specialization is extremely important too. It allows us to be neutral and guide people. So if, we don't own an agency, we're not paying ourselves beyond our escrow fee. Our allegiance is solely with our clients and is governed by the underlying contracts and the right thing to do. So we don't have the conflict of interest of paying ourselves, paying our own fees, paying people we're bringing into the process and so forth, We are independent, third party with no other interest other than managing the money in accordance to the contracts. So even if one side disagrees and it's the correct thing to do, that the money needs to go out until there's a formal dispute, we're going to pay it. And if there's a formal dispute, then we're going to navigate that process with the clients and with the attorneys. So independence is extremely important, because when conflicts of interest enter this equation, like for example, with agency held escrow, which we constantly see have problems, the agency is bringing everybody in, managing all parties and paying themselves, and is one of the primary and most important elements of the whole process, guiding everybody. When they're also controlling the money, it's a recipe for disaster, given the conflict of interest and given the temptation there without the oversight. And then bonding and insurance. We have a $44 billion bond, which is, like I told you before, is the most critical element and the most expensive part of an insurance, of a financial company's insurance or bonding package. What the bond does, it's the only insurance mechanism that protects clients against theft or employee dishonesty. It's a very confusing place in insurance, because it's a place where the terminology bonding by way of fidelity bond and insurance by way of employee dishonesty or theft kind of come together. We call it our bond. I got asked earlier today, is this a U.S. Treasury bond? No, it's not. So, for example, with SeedTrust, if $40 million or $44 million got stolen somehow by dishonesty, by our mistakes or our theft, then that insurance companies, or actually the 5 insurance companies that bond us, would pay that out to our clients up to that total amount. Now, there'd be a process, right? An investigation, forensic accounting, and all of that, but that money would be returned. So it's the most important thing. It's also the most expensive piece. And when you think about that, when I think about our bond, which we were the first to innovate it, we were the first to bring it in, it's our 3rd largest expense. Team, technology, bonding. So we make a significant investment in that bond because we believe it's extremely critical to protect people's money. The other insurances are important too. We have errors and omissions, which protects clients against if we make a mistake. Ours is $1 million, which we look at that as 10 times the most a general case would ever hold. So if we were to make mistakes on 10 cases that were significant at once, we would be covered. You know, we have cyber insurance to $1 million, and that protects us against a cyber attack. The insurance itself, the dollar amount, is important to help with damages, but the cyber insurance is also in place to bring in a team of professionals in the event that there is an attack. And then lastly, general liability. This is where it frustrates me, because a lot of IPs and surrogates and other escrow companies talk about their general liability policy as if it protects clients. And the service business, it does not. General liability protects the business against slip and fall, property damage, and things like that, but it does not protect clients against issues with the business. So don't confuse general liability, errors and omissions, or these other areas with the bond or employee dishonesty insurance policies. Those are most critical. And that kind of gets into my next element of oversight. So with SeedTrust, we have multiple licenses, legal, CPAs, et cetera. Any of those can be filed a claim against. And those folks are at risk. And all of us, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients to manage the money in accordance to these contracts. And that's not a catch-all, right? But it is a nice thing when people can claim against a state bar or CPA authorities to step in and take action against us as a company, our teammates, our owners, and so forth, and take charge of the situation. So it's an oversight function, and it's also a nice stick for clients in the event that there is an issue, they can come in and take charge. I personally think one of the biggest components of oversight for us is our bond. These are insurance companies that specialize in risk, underwriting and understanding risk. So effectively, we have 5 insurance companies that have come together to establish our $44 million bond, which is a massive bond. It's a very large policy. They are specialized entities to say, is this a risk worth taking? What is our risk of loss on this insurance policy? And every year we have no claims of loss against them, and we renew. But to get renewed every year and to go through their processes, they examine our people, they examine our systems, they examine our processes, they examine us as owners, and they're determining whether we're qualified for them to take a risk of $44 million to back us. And they do take that risk. So that oversight and that review is extremely important. And also just general audits of our books, audits of internal and external audits and reviews of the financials to ensure that everything is on the up and up and there's not mistakes or opportunities for improvement in process. So all of that really matters, right? I know that's a lot. And I'm sorry if it's a lot to kind of digest, but that to me, when you think of security and how to protect, you pick an escrow company that has these core elements in place, you're not at risk. If you pick an escrow company that doesn't have all of these elements, just know that you're taking more risk.
Mm-hmm.
It may be an unnecessary risk to take, in our opinion. And that's unfortunately some of the events of loss recently didn't check most of these boxes, if any of them. Some had one or two or one. And unfortunately, that's where the risk is elevated. So it's important that, we feel like it's really important to educate the market on this.
There is so much I want to ask in every single part of your explanation. But why don't we start with, and you've covered most of this, but intended parents are offered options of different escrow providers. And obviously, based on your explanation, you seem to be the biggest one. And with all those protections in place, you really provide those securities to intended parents. But what if they're presented with other options that are smaller escrow providers? How can they differentiate? How can they find red flags? How can they say, you know what, I this doesn't fit well with me? They may not be as big as SeedTrust, but is there anything that is obvious that they should be looking for to avoid?
Yeah, look, I don't want to disparage or speak against other models or people that hold escrow. I will tell you that from where I sit, it's hard to find really great other options that have checked all these boxes. So I think as intended parents pick providers, and there are others that are doing good work and growing or stepping up to create like models. And that's our job as the industry leader, to establish the highest standard and have others come to that standard. And again, I'm going to keep pushing the standard up, protecting everybody. But for me, I'm going to work to put out more content that outlines not work with SeedTrust. I'm biased. I think we're the best, period, and we're going to continue to strive to be the best and do the best work for our clients. But intended parents and surrogates and agencies and everybody involved in the process need to make sure that the escrow companies have these core elements that we've discussed. And for me, if they don't have that expertise, they don't have a CPA and attorney, internal or at least internal and external, you shouldn't work with them. It's too complex of a process. It's a financial company. It needs financial expertise. They need to be qualified. I think, again, structure, checks and balances and processes and systems. If there's not transparency into what they're doing, don't work with them. If they can't explain to you when you ask them, tell me the checks and balances and the approval process of a request or for money and the audit process of that to make sure it's correct and my money's not being taken or somebody's not making mistakes. If you don't get a good answer, where there's proper separation of authorities with multiple people that takes to take money or approve money in multiple steps of approval at banks, don't work with them. It's controversial. I don't think anybody should work with agency held escrow or an attorney held escrow where attorney represents one side. We have attorneys who've held escrow in this industry for an extremely long time without issues. And attorneys have held escrow for things like mortgage for clients and all kinds of issues in their accounts for as long as anybody can remember. That said, if they do hold escrow and if they are set up, if they, even with their license, which does create a nice function of oversight and risk for them and operating, they still need to have the other fundamental elements of an escrow provider to be secure, because they're just like any other provider holding escrow. Just like us with attorneys, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and somebody could call the bar, state authority on us, but they need to have all the other elements if you choose to work with them. But the issue is they have a conflict of interest where they have a greater allegiance to one party or the other. And this generally, in most cases, it won't create an issue. But in the event that it becomes contested, or there is frivolous disputes or misunderstandings or anger or emotions come in, or in the event and ultimately they represent the surrogate or the intended parent, it can be problematic. They've navigated it for a long time, but it can be problematic, putting everybody at risk. And likewise, we talked about with the agencies. So I think I personally think avoiding those models protects everybody, including the agencies, because oftentimes when there is a conflict and monies have to be withheld that needs to be paid, the agency kind of gets thrown into the middle of it and their reputation gets put at risk. So I would avoid those conflicts, or at least understand them, and understand that risk going into it. But I would say that working with that conflict is much better than working with a non-secure small operator that doesn't have any other qualifications. But pick one that knows what they're doing and has an escrow company set up. So for me, independence is really important. You can't get around bonding. I think, forget everything else I've talked about in terms of insurance. If an escrow company does not have a bond of $10 million or more, I think you shouldn't work with them. I wouldn't put my money with them. And I'll tell you why. 10 million is the number when insurance companies really ratchet up their underwriting and their due diligence to really determine whether this is a $10 million risk they're taking. Now it's a serious one. They may issue a $100,000 bond with less underwriting or less due diligence. But they're not going to issue a $10 million one. And that's the point where insurance companies start to take meaningful risk on their income and their balance sheet, to where they have to, it goes up to higher authorities. It takes more underwriting, more due diligence, higher requirements for the provider. And I think a provider getting a $10 million bond and going through that underwriting and diligence process is an indication to the market that an insurance company has said they're a reasonable risk. Look, that's my number. It could be 5 for some people. I think it should be 10, because at 5, there is underwriting requirements, but 10, they go up significantly. Other insurance should be in place. The other one that's really important is errors and omissions, because if they are a smaller operator and they do make a $100,000 mistake, the errors and omission policy will cover it. And lastly, they have to have oversight. So again, it should come from multiple sources. So oversight should come from the licenses, the attorney licenses, and they need to be licensed with active licenses, the CPA licenses, as well as the oversight of the insurance companies who are taking that risk, internal and external audits from CPAs to make sure that the accounts are what they say they are in the systems. So to me, and the rest of it's just nice to have: service, people, like transparency, speed of payments, expertise to guide. All that is important but nice to have. But to me, if these things aren't in place, an intended parent, surrogate, or donor should not work with an escrow company. And we repeatedly get examples of that being the case, and we need to step up that to where that's the minimum requirement. You may work with a boutique shop to buy a shirt or to get some bread or cheese or something yummy, and that's cute and fun. But when it comes to an organization managing money with fiduciary responsibilities and a lot of decisions and complexity, there needs to be a higher level and a higher requirement in place, just like you wouldn't hold your money at an unlicensed bank, right? So
you have talked about this at length. When it comes to insurance, you've mentioned insurance and bonds in several locations, and I'm trying to understand what's the difference between the insurance and the bond? And also, is this verifiable? How do intended parents verify that the company that they are considering does have a bond in place and how much that is for?
Yeah, I think so. First off, every agency I think should have their escrow company's insurance information on file. If they're someone that they recommend or at least include as an option or whatnot, they should have the information on file. It's important to verify that it's in place, and it's also important, and it needs to be updated every year because the policies are annual, right? So that's important. Intended parents and surrogates and owners can also request this information, and it should be available in a diligence package that can go out immediately to anybody that asks. So having that is important and verifying it. And just don't get confused because insurance is confusing, right? And these terminologies and stuff that, I think about every day, but most people don't. And it's certainly not what we want people thinking about when they think about building their family. But again, the two policies I think are absolutely critical are or let's call this the one policy because it has two names. It's a bond, also called a fidelity bond, or an employee dishonesty insurance policy. These are all one and the same, but it should be extensive. It should be, like I said, I think $10 million should be the floor for this. And then the
What
other
if,
one,
Adam, sorry to interrupt, but that brings me to a question. What if it's not the employee, it's the owner?
yeah, so within these policies, the owners are included and they
Yes.
are employees of the companies and included in the event of theft. So if in one of the recent examples, it was the owner and they did take the money, they would criminal charges would be filed. There would be the FBI, local and state authorities, and there would be ultimately the insurance / bonding company would come in and underwrite and see what happened. And if they took the money would be returned. So
So
that's important. We've seen that, there was a case to where there was an employee actually situation to where an employee took money. And in that instance, the owners worked extremely hard and diligently and were able to claim on the bond and other sources of income to put all the money back to the parents. So it just shows that that bond being in place is extremely meaningful.
what if the amount that they had in different escrow accounts, right? What is if it exceeds the bond amount? What happens with those intended parents, those surrogates that are waiting for their money to be returned?
Yeah, so that's the bond, the payout of a bond will be up to the total amount. Right, so not per client, but per total payout for the insurance company or the bonding company. So if the bond is in excess or short of the amount held, then that's the amount that will be covered by the bond. So it all just depends on the individual circumstances. If some of the money's taken, good to go. If more than that's taken, there will be a shortfall if it can't be recovered by the authorities. And I'm hoping with the current issue at hand that we're all discussing and fighting to help, we're hoping that the money or the majority of the money is available to go back to those families because there was no bond in place or no significant bond. But that in this case, it seems like it's going to take time. We're getting asked a lot, by parents, what do we do? What can we do? And I know there's a lot of us trying to work to form different things to raise money to help those impacted that are most in need. But ultimately, those families need to establish a new escrow account, and if they can, they need to reestablish the money in escrow to start continue to pay for their journey as soon as they can. If not, they need to work very closely with the attorneys, their agency, and surrogate or donor to figure out a go forward solution that's agreeable. But I think that when we see these escrow failures, and unfortunately over the past years, we've seen a number of them, usually small and under the radar, but it takes time. It takes an investigation. It takes time for everything to go through. And again, maybe there's a short-term issue at this other current provider and it'll come up sooner, to clear up sooner. But if experience prevails here, it's not going to be a matter of days or weeks. It's probably going to be months, if not longer.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And it is indeed, again, a complicated situation that is going to take time. And this is precisely why we wanted to talk to you today, so that intended parents understand, and also so that we give them peace of mind, right? That is not the industry as a whole, but it happens very, very rarely. Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, the industry should know, and intended parents and surrogates should know, there are secure operators out there that they are safe with. And just to do their research and pick one that is secure and has the elements discussed here, and they will be fine. Not to assign this tag of what that person did to this entire industry, because it's not typical or common, and it's avoidable.
Yeah. Now, switching gears a little bit to SeedTrust process. So, could you please explain what process do you use to verify the disbursement requests on your end?
Good question. So we have two types of requests that come in, or two types of payments that go out, should I say. One is scheduled payments. So with a scheduled payment, our team of experts, when we get the GSA, we pull out the scheduled payments that are based on certain benchmarks. So for an example of that would be the surrogates based compensation. That's set in the contract that start at a certain point after heartbeat confirmation. So our team will go ahead and schedule those out. So our experts have scheduled that out, verified heartbeat confirmation, and those payments go out monthly. And then we get notified if there's any change that would warrant those kind of payments stopping. Other examples of things like that are insurance. Once insurance is set, it needs to be paid. That money needs to go out monthly, and those go out. The rest of what we approve to go out comes in as request. We call them disbursement request. So intended parents, less commonly, but sometimes, but mostly are surrogates and the agencies we work with on behalf of their surrogates or the other providers or for themselves to get reimbursed will go into the SeedTrust system and request a disbursement request. And they have to put in the category, the receipts and documentation, and any pertinent details that we're going to need to approve it. So then that request comes to our team. Our team verifies that it's in accordance with the underlying contract and it's properly documented. If it is, then we approve it. If we need further documentation, then we send it back. If it's wrong, then we adjust it and send it back, or we adjust the amount and let them know that we adjusted it because the calculation needed to be changed. Which, like, for example, a lost wages calculation in certain instances can be pretty complex. And we're working on a great solution for that. That's going to make that better, which we're really excited about. But yeah, so then that comes into our team, and again, they approve it. That then goes from the approval team, which we call our legal team, to our payment team, and then to the banking team, and then audited by the auditing team. And then once that's done, it goes out. But as soon as that request is approved, our clients can see that in the system. And then anytime any dollar is moved out of escrow at SeedTrust, everybody's notified. The intended parents, the agency, and whoever's getting paid. So they get notified within the system, and if they're an outside vendor, they get notified by way of email, which assures they know the money's coming and when to expect it and how much and what it's for. So that's really our approval process. Like I said, we catch a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of back and forth between our team and the respective other people submitting, because it takes the whole village sometimes to get all this right. Multiple sets of eyes and approving and checking everything is absolutely critical.
In fact, now that you mentioned that, here at Fairfax Surrogacy, we also have check and balances We have our case managers who are submitting the disbursement requests. Then we have another person that gets notified as well as me. This person approves, and then I get a copy as well in an email so that I can double check. So that is really important. Aside of your own checks and balances, we have checks and balances here as well. What about if there is a dispute? How do you handle the dispute if the contract is not necessarily, or they're interpreting it differently?
So this is another critical role of an escrow provider in our industry. And again, while we think independence is important, so a dispute, so there's a few different things. So first of all, we have a lot of people that question payments or want to understand or ask us to halt for a minute so they can ask their questions and understand why it's going on, right? That happens, and that's our role, to educate and to be that neutral party that says, here's what the contract says, here's why this is going to get approved to go out, and that this is normal or not. So that does come up, and there's a lot of that. That's a big part of our role, is just educating and explaining, because this stuff is complex and everybody's busy and has their other jobs and lives and don't think about this all the time. And anytime money's being moved, it can be stressful. The other thing that comes up is frivolous disputes, disagreements, right? Like I'm mad at the surrogate for blank reason. And it can be all kinds of things. That's not a dispute. They're just unhappy with each other for not being Facebook friends, or that they ate fast food, or they're confused about lost wages, or why they're getting paid this, and things like this. So those things come up. And with us, with those things, we will take the time to explain it and educate, but ultimately we're tied to the contract. If the money's supposed to go out and there's not a breach or a formal claim of dispute, then we're going to go ahead and proceed. In the event that we're wrong, we will take the loss. We call it the SeedTrust guarantee. We've never had to take one of those losses, right? Because we're, in those instances, extremely careful, of course. But those are what I call kind of frivolous disputes or disagreements, where that makes us a little bit different because there's not a formal claim of dispute. And in those, it's usually us talking to them and us working with the agency sometimes to also talk to the parties, just to educate everybody. 99% of them understand, and everything moves forward, and everybody gets focused on what's important, which again is the baby and the family and the beautiful process. Then the other categories, you have a formal claim of dispute. And this can be for all kinds of reasons. But this is when the intended parent most likely is to say the surrogate's in dispute of our agreement, as in breach of our agreement for this specific reason. I'm formally claiming dispute. In that instance, SeedTrust is going to stop the process and payments. And we're going to try to educate. If there is really a dispute or an issue, usually education and bringing everybody involved with, because most things are contemplated in the contract. Sometimes the disputes arise around things that aren't in the contract that need to be negotiated. In that case, it's our responsibility to work with the agency often, and also bring in the attorneys, explain to them the issue at hand, and then let them work with their respective clients to come to an agreement. So we have to hold until there is an agreement or an understanding in the event of a formal dispute. And I think the difference is, and that happens all day. We're dealing with those type of arrangements and situations all day. And usually the attorneys can talk to the clients, and everybody can come to a reasonable understanding and move forward. If not, then we need to hold. I think the difference for SeedTrust or for independence is if there's not a formal claim and the money is due to the surrogate, it's got to be paid, because our agreement says that we're obligated to the underlying contracts. Whereas if somebody had a conflict, but we have an attorney-client relationship, then they often will have to side with their specific legal client. So there's some of the differences in disputes. But again, 99% of disputes or disagreements or misunderstandings get resolved with just explanation. And having an expert that works through these matters all day kind of explain, that's qualified to explain it. And then the 1% can often be just something that wasn't contemplated in the contract, or a tough situation, either financially or with a more challenging journey. Again, the very small set of cases where this matters, but when it does matters, it becomes a really big issue. And it is important that escrow is funded and that the money is in there, and that there is the requirement to hold escrow open, because we have seen a number of cases where there has been a disagreement over things that should be agreed on, that are normal, where escrow people stop funding escrow and try to use the holding money against the surrogates and agency as leverage to negotiate something that they prior agreed to in their contract, which puts everybody at risk. It upsets the surrogate who's carrying the baby. It puts the agency's reputation at risk, because the surrogate's likely going to go say that the agency is not getting them paid. And it's just not what we should have happen. What the surrogates are doing is very beautiful. And if the contract is clear and the money's due to her and she hasn't breached the contract, she should get paid her money. So it's important that the money's there and that she is protected. And these other circumstances where we're talking about not funding escrow, or self-funding or self-paying, or having these meaningful conflicts of interest, truly puts the surrogate agency at risk, and also puts the intended parent in a situation where they're doing a lot more of the financial explanation, understanding, and work. So nobody wins.
What if there is a breach of contract? You just freeze funds?
Yeah, if there's a material breach in contract and that has been claimed, and we can verify that it is material and it has been claimed, we do stop and hold the money until there is an agreement between the parties. And again, in that place, we bring the attorney, we bring everybody in, we try to educate, and most go away. Most of it's just an education, understanding, alignment, because there's already a contract that contemplates most everything. But in the event of a breach or somebody being a bad actor, then it takes time for the attorneys to sort it out. And look, this is a medical process. There's humans involved. There's a lot of time and steps. Things happen. So that's why having professional, good attorneys representing each party, a good agency that's experienced to guide folks, not only bringing them together, but through the whole process, a good escrow company that's there to guide them through any of the financial discussions and ensure that's being managed correctly in accordance to the contract. Good insurance companies that can advise them to make sure insurance coverage is there, which is extremely important, especially if things don't go as planned in the delivery room and so forth. So all of these professionals are extremely critical, not just escrow, and folks need to be thoughtful about who they select, because when we have a bad attorney, a bad escrow company, a less experienced, any of these categories, we have a problem. But usually we rally around them and help them. So.
Now, Adam, you had mentioned that something a while back that I just want to circle back to very quickly before we close. And that was, you mentioned audits. Are those audits done within the organization, or are those audits done by the insurance company, or who is doing those audits, and how often?
Yeah, for sure. We think, so audits should be done internally and externally. It's a function of oversight, right? So at SeedTrust, we have a separate auditing and accounting team that lives on their little island that is checking us all every day. And then we have our CPA firm that's preparing and working through that as well. We'll be doing an audit this year, a full audit. And then the various underwriting and requirements of the insurance companies. So the insurance companies are going to require the bonding company that's doing the taking the risk of theft. They're going to require financial statements, employee lists, kids' names, birth dates, social security numbers, background checks, structure system questions, system security questions, process questions, frameworks, how that's changed, and all of that in extreme detail. Again, they're underwriting a $44 million risk if we take the money, or if we mess up and one of our employees takes the money. So that extreme diligence that they go through is important, because it is a function to make sure people are doing the right thing. And if they see undue risk in the structure that would allow for theft, then they're not going to issue the policy. So that's why I say that larger bond policy does, in a way, serve as a good validation point for somebody working with an escrow company, because again, that insurance company specializes in understanding and evaluating their risk, and they're not going to take that large of a risk if there is meaningful risk there.
Thank you for explaining that, because I had missed that before. And I don't mean to take your time all day today. So I'm just going to go to one last question before we leave. And that is, what type of innovations should we expect from SeedTrust coming up? You said you're constantly innovating. You did mention the payroll changes or payroll calculator changes that are coming up. Is there anything else that we should expect from you, or you don't want to share it with anybody else yet?
Yeah, I think in terms of, well, thanks for asking. Yeah, we're constantly in innovation mode. We on all fronts, with our technology, with our structure, to make sure we can deliver for our clients at different phases, and also with our security measures. So yes, one of the things we're extremely excited that we're planning to launch here soon, would be launched, but the recent disruption delayed it. So, is a lost wages calculator, which will allow for people to calculate lost wages in the system earlier in the process, which honestly is one of the most confusing and contested parts of the surrogacy contracts when it comes to escrow and the financial payments, because the calculations can be very different based on the pay stub and multiple elements in the contract. So being able to bring that forward in the process and have it displayed and explained very clearly in the system, we think is going to have a very meaningful impact. Because again, our role and focus is removing financial stress. And if somebody thinks they're going to get this much or should pay this much, and it's different, then it causes tension in an already emotional process. So putting that in the forward in the process and making it really clear and beautifully displayed on our dashboard is something we're really excited about. We're also working and getting very close to life insurance for our surrogates. This was motivated by having some really terrible situations where insurance wasn't in place. So we've been working with Marsh McLean and some other really large insurance companies to see if we can get a policy in place that would ultimately allow us to bring $250,000 of free life insurance to all of our surrogates. And this is then in addition to 10K of loss of reproductive organs, and also with the ability to buy up to if they want to get over $1 million in coverage with no risk of underwriting, which is really exciting. And we think it's at like a fraction of the cost today. So that would be fun. We're working on that. That's and then obviously in SeedTrust, we're constantly updating our system, our technology, our security. We have another step in integration with some of our banks. That's more technical and nerdy stuff, but it gets me really excited. And as we get closer to that further integration into the banking universe, to where it further protects clients even more so than our current measures. And it could allow us to bring other things, other bank products through that banking partner to be available to the market, like lending. Mm-hmm. That's far out. That's something we're not there on yet, but that's something we're working on to see if we could bring, by way of pressuring a bank, to create a meaningful lending program that we can help market, that they can administer, to help folks who want to go through surrogacy, that don't have all the money to be able to afford it, especially in light of all the costs continuing to go up.
That would be
Again, we
amazing.
don't have that. That's not a 2024 innovation. These are things we're working on. And some of the times when we start working on these new programs, they take years because anything we roll out, we want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure we can execute it well for our clients. So some of the stuff takes time, but that's some of the things we're working on.
That's exciting. I'm excited to, I can't wait to hear that a lending program is available for the intended parents that need it. Adam, thank you so much. This has been such an insightful conversation and so much needed at this time, especially. I appreciate your time. And for those who want to learn more, we are going to link the article that you wrote with all of this information here in the bio. And I'm going to put you on the spot here before we go, but we have talked about all the professional side of things. We have talked about SeedTrust, and very, very quickly just give our listeners an idea of who you are. Who is Adam Winder behind the scenes on the personal level?
Well, thank you. And yeah, I do highly encourage everybody to read the article we wrote. It's really intended to be a guide around a very over detailed guide to what security measures you should look for in escrow. You can just delete the parts about us if you don't want to select us, and it should be a good guide of what matters within selecting an escrow company. It's too long, but we felt that it was important to just put it all out there for folks to have to digest, to read, and we'll break it into bits and pieces and more digestible formats in time. We really hope that helps. Also, we're available. Myself, our team are all very passionate about helping folks. Every time this happens, SeedTrust donates all of our services and steps in and tries to help those impacted in every way possible by way of guidance and anything we can do. And we're very passionate about it as we take the responsibility of guiding people through this financial stuff very, very, very seriously. So please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm available 24/7 to answer any of your questions. We want to make sure people feel confident and secure, especially in this time of when these bad things have happened. I get lost in words because I get so angry about it because it's disgusting and unavoidable. But Adam, yeah, I'm a recovering banker. I was a banker and had a lot of fun and learned more so much in my 10 years in banking. I always tell everybody like my Georgetown MBA compared to my banking. Georgetown MBA was nice, but I learned it all by working in banking, underwriting businesses, working with executives across different segments, and ultimately the bank executive team and the strategy role. It was a very privileged role because I got to work directly with folks for 10 years that are now in my seat in different capacities. So that was really fun. But yeah, I tell everybody I love business and innovation. I think that's my hobby. I'm so passionate about it. I think if you can find a meaningful problem, that's something that people are struggling with, that's not done well today, or that has a world of opportunity to improve it, and you can come up with the structure and ideas to improve it. And usually that's just by listening to the market and what people want. And then you can build an awesome team of people to solve that problem, which ultimately helps people. That is like one of the most beautiful things. And I know it sounds super ridiculous and nerdy, but I think having a meaningful problem to solve and building a heck of a team to solve that problem really well consistently is ultimately a business. And if you have a business with a great purpose, and I can't think of a better purpose than what we are doing at SeedTrust to help people build their families and making the financial piece less stressful, it gets me I just love it. Beyond that, I'm a dad. I have 2 kids. I'm very blessed. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son who keep me very busy and active, and a wonderful wife. So just very fortunate to have a family of my own, and just love this industry. And I've volunteered and served as the president of the ethics organization, which I'm extremely proud of that organization and how far that's come. I now sit on the board I hope that my seat on the board can help influence more thoughtful and sound and increase and help the organization as its purpose is to raise ethical standards. I think with this recent escrow issues, we'll have a lot of focus on escrow. So hopefully we can, not just by way of us innovating and pushing, but also by way of SeedTrust, which is the industry leading organization, to continue to push the proper standards. But yeah, I feel every day humbled and blessed to just be part of this wonderful industry and have such an awesome team and amazing colleagues across the space to work with. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, I've been infuriated with this situation. It's so heartbreaking and emotionally stressful for me because I just know this stuff's avoidable. And we take responsibility to educate and ensure that it never happens again to anybody.
Yeah, let's hope not. Let's hope that you know, all this information helps everybody out there who is considering to do surrogacy, and the agencies also that give referrals to the intended parents, to make sure that we are checking all of these boxes that you mentioned during this conversation. Adam, thank you so much for your time.